silêncio da festa deve...
Bora!
Descabelado.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I just came across about a film that Netflix released, The First Temptation of Christ. I just came across a YouTuber who was talking about it, and there seems to have been a cancel culture around whether or not Christians should cancel their Netflix subscription over the controversy of the film. Now, of course, I'm just going to give you my thoughts about it. I haven't watched the film, but I've looked around.
The first reason, it's blasphemous,
which seem to be very obvious issues. I'm just going to go through a couple of things here and then just give you my feeling about it. How does it impact me as a creator or as a filmmaker who's also pursuing content and making films and pitching them to Netflix? Can I work with them as a filmmaker? Can I, as a Christian, continue to have a subscription with Netflix when they are making content that seems to be taking a jab at Christianity or the Christian faith like this? Alright, let's dive into it and just how do we make sense of it as Christians. For the record, this has been out for like a year now. This is kind of like a 1-year commemoration of the film. To make matters worse, Netflix actually released it as a Christmas special. I know it's still up there, so it's been a year, so I guess they don't have any intentions on actually removing it off their platform. I know people have said a lot about it already, and yeah, I know the only reason I'm kind of making a video about it now is because Ruslan just made a video about it and the cancel culture and everything. So let's just sort of like say this is a late response to the whole controversy. With that said, now the film has received a lot of backlash, obviously. In Brazil, a lot of people have really not taken lightly to the film, and they've voiced their concerns. A couple of things that people have a problem with that, this isn't licensed content. This is more like a Netflix original, which means that they own the content, as opposed to it being a creation by another individual. Now, are there obvious problems? Yeah, sure, there's definitely obvious problems here. The film is a parody. It's basically a parody of the Christian faith. There's a lot of people who have different views and opinions about it, who say, well, it's really just entertainment, really. It's just not really all that serious. It seems to be talking about Jesus, and it seems to be, describing him in a strange and funny way. Not just Jesus, but a lot of the other biblical characters who are portrayed in a relatively villainous or immoral fashion that doesn't necessarily depict them in the original sense that they are or that they were. The Bible is not fiction. We regard the Bible to be a paragon of our faith, the Word of God. It's not some kind of fairy tale. Though somebody has taken something that is real and solid and concrete, and they've fictionalized it and they've reinterpreted it into their own idea of reimagined work, but turned it into a parody. So here's the thing. Why does it seem like it's only works that are concerned with Christianity that seems to be so easy to take a jab at? Because you never really get this with other religions, faith-based systems, because they would make a big hoo-ha about it, Obviously there's going to be a lot of problems, You wouldn't do that with Islam. We know that there's obviously going to be a lot of issues, but it seems like because it's Christianity, what are Christians going to do? There were issues of the content and the depictions and the conclusion of how it's played out. I want to focus a lot more on the culture around this and what we as Christians, I think, can do, and how we can sort of like play in an actual role in addressing things like this, and how do we actually deal with things like this. I think that's more of the kind of focus that I really want to focus on. How do we react about things like this as a culture? Okay, according to an article that I just read on cinemablend.com, Netflix subscribers in Brazil were unpleasantly surprised earlier this month when comedy special The First Temptation of Christ from Brazil YouTube group Porta dos Fundos hit the surface. The special features some very non-traditional characterizations of biblical people, including a pot-smoking Mary and what seems to be a gay Jesus. That's obviously going to be a problem, The special made them so upset, actually, that a petition was begun to have it removed from Netflix, which I think it's a fair thing to do. Create a petition and say, hey, guys, we got a problem with this. You can't create things like this. I think that's the right way to go about it. Now, according to the star of the film, this is what he thinks. He believes that People are only upset about the fact that Jesus is depicted as being gay, and not because of the pot smoking, Mary, or all the other depictions. And this was his response to the film and everything. Now, there's a quotation here that says, "It doesn't incite violence. We are not saying people shouldn't believe in God. They, Netflix, haven't said anything to us like maybe we should stop making the special available. They support freedom of speech." The show is almost a Christian fairy tale. Jesus faces off bravely with the devil and then chooses to follow God, accepting to be his son, Jesus Christ. A lot of people, when they see the show, say, "Oh, that's what they are talking about. Okay, that's okay. They're just having fun. No problem at all." For some Catholics here in Brazil, it's okay. If Jesus is a bad guy, uses drugs, that's no problem. The problem is he's gay. So he can't be gay. And that's interesting because Jesus is everything. Okay, so there's a couple of dilemmas here. There's something that I want to just address about freedom of speech and the idea of freedom of speech. Okay, everybody has freedom of speech. Number one, freedom of speech, or the idea of freedom of speech, is not a law. It's not a legalistic term that we need to address like something to glorify, because everybody sort of uses the idea of freedom of speech as an excuse nowadays to say whatever they want, do whatever they want. It's freedom of speech, you know. Well, here's the thing: you are automatically by default free to say whatever you want. You have freedom of speech. Okay, it's kind of like a human right by default. You are free to say whatever you want, but that's not the end result of the conversation. We don't just stop there and say, well, I did what I did on the basis of freedom of speech, so therefore that is the end result and the justifying factor of one's actions and one's speech. Here's the thing: speech incites something. If I curse at somebody or I say something to hurt their feelings, there's a reaction to that. Somebody's feelings is hurt because your speech has consequence. Whatever it is that you say, that you have the freedom to say, has a consequence, and that's where we gotta start having a discussion around that. In as much as we have freedom of speech, there's also freedom of choice. There's also freedom to react as well. So it's just silly that a lot of people tend to want to use the idea of freedom of speech as an excuse, because it's just like, okay, yeah, you have freedom of speech. Freedom of speech doesn't necessarily give you the right to offend anyone. You know, it's not a license to offend people. It's not a license to trample over others' freedom of speech. So freedom of speech doesn't cancel freedom of speech. In other words, we're on even ground here. So we gotta meet each other somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Here's a trivia. What does that actually mean for someone like me who's a filmmaker? Can I work with Netflix as a producer? Can I pitch concepts to Netflix as a producer? So here's the thing: Netflix already, they license content that's Christian orientated content and films that you might find there. It might be documentaries or whatever the case may be. I don't know if The Passion of Christ is on Netflix, but I just need to make sure. I just need to double check that. Here's the other thing. Okay, when you ask questions like that, you know, obviously I don't agree. I don't think it was a great idea for them to make that kind of content. Obviously there's somebody who works for Netflix there who made a very, very bad decision. But that's the thing with organizations. We have to ask the same question with broadcasters, with every other network. It can't just suddenly be a conversation that we want to strike when it comes to this alone. Why not with SABC, for instance? For me in South Africa, South African Broadcasting Corporation, for instance, why not with them? I mean, everybody makes content with the SABC. They are a public broadcaster, so therefore you're going to find people who are not believers pitching concepts to them because they have the right to express themselves, to give the voice to everyone. If somebody has a documentary, social justice, human rights, or whatever, and they're advocating for same-sex marriage, you know, they might put that documentary on the SABC, and as a public broadcaster, they have a mandate to represent different views or whatever the case may be. I don't have to agree with that specific content or whatever, but I can make my own content and put it out there. And they need to also give it a platform as well. When you're dealing with public matters, you gotta understand, the public is everybody, believers and unbelievers. So what would you expect from something like that? What would you expect from Netflix though? Because they're not a Christian platform. That's the fact of reality. And the same thing applies with nature documentaries or conservation. I mean the conservation and wildlife space. Does that apply for National Geographics? I mean, you know, you're going to see content that talks about Homo sapiens and evolution, evolutionary species, and so on. You'll meet different types of people. You'll meet different people who represent different bodies and schools of thought. What about them? Is it that when they put out content that doesn't necessarily represent the Bible's rendition of creation, should I say, okay, I'm not going to support National Geographic because of that? Well, which I get that there is a difference between them, the fact that content that is very specific at taking a jab on a jab at Christianity and Jesus is slightly different from someone who's expressing a different idea that might oppose Christianity. I get that there's a contrasting difference, but at the same time, I just feel like, what do you specifically expect from a platform that gives a platform to everybody to express themselves? That's what you kind of expect. So why I'm kind of bringing this question up to question whether or not people should cancel Netflix. Am I for that? Am I against that? I think it's an individual choice. If you feel like you're conflicted so much that you want to cancel Netflix, then go ahead and cancel it. That's up to you. For those who don't feel like they have to cancel it, then you don't have to cancel it. That's entirely up to you as well, because you're not really conflicted by that. I'm not going to watch the film, obviously. Because I'm not going to waste my data like that. Maybe I'll watch it, maybe I won't watch it. Who knows, maybe I'll watch it and do another review about it. I don't know. But the point of the matter is, it all comes down to understanding the framework of the world we live in, I think. So I just think the same applies in everything else. And I think we need to just put everything into perspective. If you don't know a YouTuber called Ruslan, he made a video about it and he gave some thoughts on it and gave some scriptures that he based it off on. His view centers a lot around not sort of like being like the world and making a mockery of ourselves as Christians. We need to be careful how we engage about some of these topics, cancel culture and etc. We need to sort of like be organized, and if you want to rally behind anybody who's going to create a petition, then go ahead and do that. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's definitely something to be addressed with Netflix. I mean, I don't have a relationship with Netflix at this point, but I do have a voice that I think I can voice out and give my opinions about this matter. I think let's rally behind those who are creating those petitions. This is definitely heresy entertainment, which I have no doubt in my mind that it's definitely creating a lot of controversy out there, but I think they are ways of addressing these kinds of topics and engaging with organizations like Netflix and so on. And if you're in the entertainment industry and you've got networks and ties with organizations like that, I think it's important to also engage with them and just let them know that, hey, look, it's not cool, that's not a good idea. Just because Christians are individuals who seem like all they're going to do is just pray about something and not really do much about it, doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have a problem with something. We have a problem. There's a very big problem. There's a hairy problem in this situation. Okay, but anyway, you guys let me know what you think in the comment section. Thanks for dropping by. Do tell me what you think about this, and if you've watched the movie, give me your views about it, because I haven't really watched it, but that's just what I think we should do about it. But do like the video, do leave a comment, and let's engage about it. And please do me a solid one and hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell if you want to get updates into every other video that I drop. I'm going to be creating content consistently every week from now on. So thanks for the support for those who have subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, do subscribe. Hope to see you next time on my next video.